My name is John Lynn. I am a computer scientist and an educator, and I'm going to talk to you today about bias in the age of AI powered visualizations and the bias that's baked into things like ChatGPT and large language models in a presentation I have called Is My Robot Racist? So if you are a data visualization person or kind of, have eyes, you've seen how AI has popped up in every single computer tool that you kind of have access to, right? Tableau has Einstein and Copilot that can create dashboards and data calculations. Power BI can actually create report pages. Google Cloud can now create slides for you. And these tools are only increasing and you know getting more powerful in some instances. And I, as a computer scientist and a programmer, use these tools all the time. But it's important to understand these AI tools, these large language models, actually have a lot of bias baked into them. And it's not simple bias, right? There's a big bias ecosystem in almost every part that these tools touch. And so as we use these tools to generate things like labels or actual report pages or visualizations, we need to understand the bias that's baked into these models so we can be better trained and make sure that our visualizations and our output doesn't have the same bias, right? And so to start with, I'm going to break down all the bias that's in these tools. And at the end of this, you can see all the citations and the resources. A lot of these have, popped up in the last couple of years in real life. So the first case I want to point out, it's probably the biggest case, is when the training data doesn't reflect reality, or when the training data is actually infused with bias, right? So in this case, for instance, models will actually have stereotypes. So if I ask it for a letter of recommendation for a man versus a woman, it's going to give me very gendered language, and the language it's going to use is going to be much different for the man versus the woman. The same sort of bias that we try to get away from when we write letter versus recommendation as educators, right? These hiring algorithms have already been shown to discriminate on things like this. So, for instance, it discriminated against some women on maternity leave because the training data lacked the representation of their career breaks, right? And so it was biased against them. And this bias gets baked into our algorithms and our technology. And it actually skews the math itself. So, like studies actually shown that facial recognitions will fail on darker skinned individuals because of training data, right? So you have things like Teslas that are hitting people that are people of color because they're not being trained on whiter skinned individuals. And then you have algorithmic bias that has been built into systems from long ago, right? Things like redlining, where we took proxies for things like race. So we took zip codes as kind of a proxy for race. And some of that same bias gets built into the large language models nowadays and then gets outputted just the same. We have pulsometers that work worse on people of color because of the algorithms and the technology and kind of the engineering behind it. And no one's really kind of putting in the time to fix the bias that's inputted in these systems. And what's worse is with a large language model, you kind of have a black box, right? So it's hard to actually see the bias that's inside these models. But we can see the bias when we get the output. And we start using these systems to actually automate things, we start seeing more and more of these bias actually harm individuals. And this is not a new thing. Industrial environments, as we started to kind of industrialize and automate industrialization, we started kind of move too fast, and we started to create these hazardous environments that actually hurt workers, and that would actually create production errors as we kind of moved faster than we needed to. And we're starting to see that now, where healthcare workers are using AI tools to help diagnose, but they're not cross-checking, and it's actually leading to harm where it will recommend medicine where the patient is allergic to the medicine. We've seen automated bias, automation cause a lot of harm in the financial markets, like in 2012, where almost $500 million got wiped away in an hour due to Knights Capital's automated systems. So these are not new things. They're kind of old things that are getting kind of built into the new tools we have. And then there's representational gaps, right? So this is when things get outputted that don't represent the reality that actually exists. So for instance, this first picture asked it for a group of individuals and are successful individuals, and this is the group it gave me, a group of 3 white guys. I asked it for a picture of a nurse and an engineer, and it gave me a white engineer and a white nurse. And then I asked it for a person in a wheelchair and an older individual, and it kind of gave me some sad individuals, right? And we kind of see the biases baked into these, right? The gender bias, the racial bias, the age and the disability bias. These stereotypes are getting baked into the images that actually get outputted out. And so we need to be careful when using these tools because they're going to have some of the same bias that individuals have, right? It's also going to have political bias. So, for instance, research is pretty clear that there is a kind of a left political skew to things like ChatGPT and these big, large language models. But there are individuals that are trying to reskew these. They're trying to guide the way that these models think. So, for instance, a couple weeks ago, Grok, Elon Musk's AI, got in trouble for talking about a right-wing talking point of a made-up South African white genocide. And it was found out that this was pre-programmed into Grok to mention this. So somebody was actually trying to make Grok give a political statement. XAI never said who this individual was, but they did rectify the incident. And then, of course, these AI systems make up stuff, right? And that's the biggest issue we need to deal with is because it will just straight up lie to you. And that is a piece of technology that people aren't used to. They're not used to a technology that will just, it will lie. And this happens when they will create this false information. And so in the last couple of years, we have seen lawyers get in trouble where they will submit AI citations. They won't even check the citations that are coming from their large language models. 95 incidents in the last year, 23 of those in the last couple of months. It is only heating up and it's not getting better. There's a lot of companies that have admitted to using AI generated stuff and then finding out that it was actually hallucinated information that they acted upon. The Chicago Tribune over here published a summer reading list, and 8 of these books are made up. They are not real at all. They are AI generated. So we are seeing in real settings, legal, healthcare, financial, these ramifications of these AI systems being used in a non-thoughtful manner. So I'll just end you quickly on this. I do think that there are ways we can actually use these things thoughtfully. So always have a human in the loop. Never fully delegate. You need to verify everything that comes out of there, and that makes domain expertise crucial, right? I think there's some things we can be doing to change our workflows. So for instance, we can actually be labeling everything that we do with AI as AI-assisted content. We need to be looking at all of our stuff for bias. We need to audit everything for bias, not just AI-generated stuff for bias, but even human created stuff as well, and increase our diversity training because that will help us for creating less biased stuff, but it'll also help us identify the bias that's coming from these models. And then I think there's some non-practical things I would do, like audit all the training data that comes from the models that you're using. This is hard, not impossible. You can even do dynamic evaluations to figure out, what's coming out of these models. Is it actually biased? Should I be using it? Really red teaming, figuring out where does the bias exist in these models, and where can it affect our workflow as a company or individual. And then this is what I would take away from to tomorrow, and I would go and do immediately, right? Your immediate steps is audit the current AI usage you're using now, figuring out can there potentially be bias? Do I have a human in the loop that's actually checking for that bias? And then, label everything that you are having assisted with AI as AI assisted. So one, everyone else knows, and you can kind of check for that bias and figure that out as well. So I thank you for your time. If you're interested in learning more, I have plenty of resources and citations in that bit.ly link. My name is John Lane, and you can contact me at johnlane913 at gmail.com. Thank you.